Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Good morning. For those of you who are not accustomed to visiting God's country, welcome to the Bronx. We are here this morning at Jackson Houses here in the South Bronx. Before we get started, and the fact that we're addressing some unsanitary, unacceptable, deplorable conditions that the folks here at Jackson, and not just here at Jackson, but we know it's pervasive throughout NYCHA developments in the Bronx and throughout the city of New York. Before we go into what we saw and how we are so grateful that the governor's here with us today, I wanted to just acknowledge that we've been joined today by Assemblyman Michael Blake. Thank you, Assemblyman, for being with us here today. You will hear in short order from Danny Barber, the president of the New York City Housing Authority Citywide Council of Presidents, and he's also the president of the Tenant Association here at Jackson. We're joined by Dr. Howard Zucker, the commissioner of the New York State Department of Health, who will be introducing our governor. And then to bat up cleanup, we have Councilmember Ritchie Torres, who is also the chair of the City Council's Investigation Committee. Did I get that right? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're here today because we know that the New York City Housing Authority residents, day in and day out, are living in unacceptable conditions. I've been talking about this for quite some time. I put out a report working with my colleagues in government last year, and it was the report addressed public safety in public housing. Now, that would suggest that we're just speaking of crime in the New York City Housing Authority. But if you look at our report and if you visit different NYCHA developments, you will see that we are also speaking of living conditions like what we saw here today in the apartment 7F, where we saw cabinets that have never been put in, where we saw roaches, where we saw walls that were literally crumbling. We saw mold. And we know that there's also a heating crisis in NYCHA. In fact, those of you who've been standing out here for the last couple of minutes, if you're freezing, if you're feeling cold, think about this feeling sitting in your own living room. Well, unfortunately, thousands and thousands of NYCHA residents have suffered through those conditions this past winter. And so what we are calling for now is for us to have all boots on the ground, all hands are on deck. We need to make sure that not only the state legislature does design build, but there needs to be a declaration of an emergency so that we can ensure that we identify those contractors as quickly as possible and accelerate the procurement process so that that contractor can then use the design bill to get molding out of the bathrooms here, to get lead paint out of the apartments here, to get boilers in the developments as quickly as possible. Not too far from here, you have Patterson houses who have had fully funded boilers since 2011. This man right here with the state legislature, they put up the Mario Cuomo Bridge in less time than it has taken the New York City Housing Authority to put in 4 boilers at the Patterson houses. That is unacceptable. But the good news is that we have Governor Cuomo with us here today. The good news is that this is not the first time. We feel confident because Governor Cuomo was here when we needed him on Legionnaires. When Hurricane Maria hit last year, on September 20th in Puerto Rico, Governor Cuomo was not only here in the Bronx, not only throughout the city and the state, sending resources, sending men and women so they can do the utility services out in Puerto Rico, but he continues this weekend in Somos El Futuro. He announced another initiative so that we can continue to build up Puerto Rico. Governor Cuomo has been with us here. He assigned $1.8 billion for our infrastructure on Bruckner. And so now, if others won't answer the crying calls of the men and women of the New York City Housing Authority, that now we have our champion, Governor Cuomo, with us here. We just visited Jeffrey Blyther's apartment. It was heartbreaking. The conditions there, none of you would accept it in your apartments for a single hour. And here he is with his family, raising young Jesse, 14 months old. If these parents would have created those conditions for Jesse, we would all be saying that Jesse should be taken away from them. But they did not create those conditions. Those conditions are created by the New York City Housing Authority. And this has to change. They deserve better. NYCHA residents deserve better. We are New Yorkers. We can, we should do better. And with Governor Cuomo here today, I am confident that we will do better. And so with that said, somebody who's made sure that not only his residents here at Jackson, but also residents throughout the city of New York get their voices heard. All of us have been responding to those voices. He's been a true leader, someone who doesn't get paid for the job that he does as TA president and as president of the citywide tenant presidents, is none other than the great voice. He's a big man, he has a big heart, and he's been my friend, Danny Barber.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And I want to say again to everyone, thank you for coming out. To Jeff, thank you for allowing us to show the conditions of your apartment. And I'm sure that after today, we will come to a conclusion and see that your apartment will get addressed rapidly, as it should have been from the get-go. I want to thank all the resident leaders, the residents, the reporters, and I want to thank the governor, especially and his team, for accepting the Citywide Council of Presidents' invitation to see for himself the inhumane conditions here in NYCHA housing. As you have seen today, residents must live with the treatment of toxic lead, toxic mold, frigid apartments, and other abysmal and dangerous conditions that should not be accepted anywhere in the world, let alone here in New York City. We have raised these issues for years, but NYCHA has repeatedly ignored our concerns or failed to significantly address our issues. And sadly, the mayor has seen and heard the conditions, and he has not done as much as he could to make it better. This is why we're especially encouraging the governor and his health team are here today. While others do nothing, governor is taking action to fix this injustice, and we look forward to working with him to address the health issues and safety risks in our homes. The residents of public housing have been crying out far too long. Their voices haven't been heard. They reach out in all forms, all stages, and a lot of times we're ignored. We're here to tell you today, so please quote it right, write it right. We will never and no longer will be ignored. The residents of public housing have stood up. We're exercising our voice. We're exercising our right to stand, and we will no longer take the injustices that's being pushed down to us. So once again, Governor Cuomo and your team, Dr. Zucker, I thank you guys for stepping up to the plate. To our attorneys, Jim Walden, at-risk communities, and the residents in the whole Citywide Council of Presidents, and all of the people that live in public housing. I thank you guys. I thank you guys for putting your trust and your faith in me, and I promised you that I wouldn't lead you wrong or lead you astray. I'm a big boy, as I was introduced, and big boys, we tend to take a lot of punches. And I've been known to handle a lot of punches and hold a lot of blows. So we the residents, we won't step down. There's more actions to come for us. We are the largest voting block of people here in the city of New York. And we're here to exercise that. We're no longer sitting down. We moved the blinders off our eyes. We can see 360 degrees now. We're no longer like that horse with them blinders to have that tunnel vision to go forward. We see you, we hear you, and we're going to continue to fight for you. The Citywide Council of Presidents is on your side. Thank you. I've had the pleasure of meeting this gentleman this morning, and all I could say is, with the governor's selection of the New York State Health Commissioner, wow, he didn't fail us at all. Dr. Zucker.
Thank you, Danny.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny. This has been a profoundly informative visit in which we've had an opportunity to observe the terrible conditions that are in NYCHA housing. You know, we've read the reports, but now we have seen this firsthand. And today we surveyed several apartments in the Jackson houses, and the conditions we see affirm what we have learned in the hearings and the reports. These conditions are shameful and are potentially dangerous. We saw evidence of mold, of vermin. We saw decades-old, potentially hazardous paint peeling from the walls. And while I was here, I asked my team to look into this, and there is a report from October 2017 of a child who had elevated lead, and the team came in and found lead levels in the building, in that apartment. These conditions appear to present a clear threat to the health of the residents in this building. They are a reflection of the conditions in NYCHA housing. In Jeff's unit, when I went in there, I saw that there wasn't a working smoke detector there. So I am going to leave Jeff with a smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector for you.
Great.
Batteries included, just have to put it on the wall. It's all set. This is just simply unacceptable. It's clear that there is a need for action. So following this morning's visit, I am recommending to the governor that he order a full and thorough investigation of the NYCHA housing to determine the potential threats to the residents and lay the groundwork for corrective action. We can't let these conditions fester any longer. The health and well-being of New Yorkers is at stake. It is clear that the governor understands the threats facing NYCHA and is committed to taking action to keep NYCHA residents safe. And the New York State Department of Health stands ready to assist in this effort. So now please welcome me and join me in welcoming the governor of the great state of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to say it's a pleasure to be here this morning, but it's actually not. The situation we've seen is as upsetting and as disturbing as anything I've seen anywhere, and I've been through public housing all across this country. I've been through the worst housing complexes all across this country. And this situation is really intolerable. As you heard, there are roaches, the vermin, there are health safety issues, the paint is coming off the walls, the plaster is coming off the walls. It has nothing to do with the way the family has taken care of the unit. The unit is crumbling around them. And it is disgusting, it's uninhabitable, and it is just shocking that in New York State we would have people who are subjected to these conditions. And on behalf of the people of the state, I apologize to the NYCHA residents because they deserve better, and they'll get better. Thank you. I want to thank the Borough President for his advocacy, for his borough. His strong voice always resonates. Let's give him a round of applause. Danny Barber, the President of the NYCHA Citywide Council of Presidents, thank you for your leadership. Your attorney, Jim Walden, it shouldn't have had to come to the point where you had to hire an attorney to represent the interests of the residents. And I'm sorry it had to go that far. I want to thank Commissioner Zucker for being here today and for his comments. Members of the City Council, members of the State Assembly. Some issues are very complex. Some are very simple. This is simple. We know how to build housing. We know how to maintain housing. We know how to paint walls. We know how to do these things. This is just a pure case of neglect. That's all this is. It's just neglect. The residents' rights have been abused, period. No one should be subjected to these conditions. I'm not here just as the governor. I started as a person who built affordable housing. I started as a tenants advocate. And I want the residents to know today I am on their side, and I will be on their side until we correct this situation, period. It's not a question of blame. One day we'll get to the pearly gates, and we'll meet our Maker, and he will determine blame. Governors, when they do their job, are about fashioning solutions and moving forward. And that's what I want to do today. First, we heard from Commissioner Zucker, who said there are health and safety violations that are currently in these units. We want a full inspection. We want to find out what we're dealing with. Do we have lead paint? What is the extent of the mold? Is the mold dangerous? What is the extent of the lack of heat? When you talk about NYCHA residents, you have to remember that you're talking about young children. You're talking about Jesse, 14 months old. That's who you're exposing to these conditions. Danny Barber is a big boy. He's a very big boy, as a matter of fact. And I have no doubt that Danny Barber can take care of himself. But that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about Jesse and the majority of the NYCHA residents who are young children. And they deserve better from us. President Barber is also right. The residents have to be empowered. They shouldn't have to go get a private attorney to sue to represent their interests. I believe in resident empowerment. I think we should institutionalize resident empowerment. There's a group called Community Voices Heard that's been pushing a proposal, which is exactly right, to give residents an institutional voice so they don't have to go to the courts to assert their rights, and they have an institutional platform, and we're going to work on that. As far as NYCHA and the resolutions at NYCHA, there are a number of problems. I was a former HUD secretary, and I've been through this problem for many times, for many years. Part of the problem is NYCHA's management. The bureaucracy, the maze of bureaucracy, they just can't make the repairs fast enough. They now estimate that if you give them $1 today, it takes 3 years for them to actually get that dollar translated into progress. The conditions that exist today in that apartment cannot last for 3 years. You can't tell the residents of NYCHA, I'm going to replace your boiler in 3 years. I'm going to send an exterminator in 3 years. I'm going to clean the walls in 3 years. It can't be that way. So we need to do a number of things. We need an expedited mechanism that can come in and actually get the work done without waiting for the NYCHA bureaucracy. There is legislation called design-build legislation. What it allows is a builder to come in and start working right away as they're designing the project. So they don't have to take several years to design and then start building. That's part of the solution. I've been asked by the residents to declare an emergency, and I have no problem declaring this an emergency because it is a health and safety emergency. The question then becomes, what specific action do we take once we do a declaration of emergency? And what mechanism do we want to put in place to get around the NYCHA bureaucracy? I am open to all options on that. I've spoken to the City Council about this several weeks ago. Councilman Torres is with us today. The City Council is going to be in Albany tomorrow. I'm going to meet with them. I would like an answer from the City Council. What do they want the state to do specifically? What kind of emergency declaration? How do they see us getting improvements done quickly? And I will be guided by the City Council. I've been talking to the mayor's office about this, but I want to know from the City Council what they want to do to fix it and what they want now. Assemblyman Blake is here from the New York State Legislature. We're going to do the budget. I'm going to be supportive of design-build legislation. I want to know from the New York State Assembly what kind of declaration of emergency they want and who do we put in place to get this done. But we have to have these answers, and we have to have these answers in the next couple of weeks because this situation has gone on long enough. The borough president mentioned Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was hit by a hurricane, and it is a human tragedy. It is also a government failure. The people in Puerto Rico were abandoned by our federal government, and they were, and we called them on it. But we did something else. We also stepped up, and people organized, and we made progress. Blaming the federal government, trying to encourage them to actually do what they're supposed to do, but at the same time make progress. That's what we have to do here, because this is another human tragedy. And we have people who need help. And we need to make progress, and we need to make progress quickly. And I'm a New York City boy, born and bred, hence the accent. I did not learn it in Berlitz. Any New York resident who walked through that unit would be outraged. Anyone. Not just a NYCHA resident, not just a reporter, any New Yorker who walked through and saw that filth and saw the conditions that we let our brothers and sisters live in would be outraged. And that outrage has to be turned into action. And that's what we have to do, and that's what we have to do now. Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to Councilman Ritchie Torres.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Ritchie Torres. I chair the Committee of Investigations in the New York City Council. And I want to thank the governor for his partnership with the New York City Council. There's been no greater defender and supporter of an independent city council than you, Governor Cuomo. And you have seen clearly the value of a city council that holds the mayor accountable. And nowhere is accountability more needed than in public housing. You know, as many of you know, the mayor's out of town. But the mayor's been out of town when it comes to the management of public housing. Right? His absence from New York City symbolizes, to me, the absentee management of public housing and the neglect of public housing residents as second-class residents and second-class New Yorkers. Right? Not only are residents living under conditions of lead and leaks and vermin and rodents, but many of them are reeling from the impact of one of the coldest winters that we've seen in the history of New York City. Right? The mayor and NYCHA, during the worst of the cold spell, said that more than 90% of the residents in public housing had consistent heat and hot water, giving the impression that there was no crisis, that all of us were overreacting, that nothing was wrong. And so under the leadership of Speaker Johnson, the council conducted its own investigation. And we uncovered that 323,000 residents at various points in the heating season were deprived of heat and hot water. The loss of heat and hot water on the scale of 323,000 residents is a humanitarian crisis. It is a state of emergency. But more than a humanitarian crisis, it is a failure of governance and political leadership here in New York City. And we refuse to stand by idly while public housing is left to rot from within. And so the council is committed to partnering with the governor, with the borough president, with the residents to hold the mayor accountable for improving the living conditions here in public housing. Governor, I turned 30 today. Today's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
And I have to be honest with you, my mother lives in public housing, and your advocacy for the residents of public housing is probably the best birthday gift I could hope for. So thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Before the governor, I believe the governor is going to have take some questions. Brevemente en el español, me llamo Ruben Diaz Jr., soy presidente del condado del Bronx. Sabemos que aquí en la autoridad de vivienda pública tenemos muchos latinos, no solamente en el Bronx, sino a nivel de la ciudad de Nueva York. Estamos esta mañana con el asambleísta Michael Blake, con el concejal Ritchie Torres, con el gobernador Cuomo y un sinnúmero de líderes estatales que ya vemos que cuando los residentes gritan y están pidiendo todo lo que se merecen, que son mejores condiciones, que sí en housing lo que tenemos es un crisis. Estamos felices que tenemos un gigante como el gobernador, una persona que ha sido nuestro campeón un sinnúmero de veces. Nos hemos visto el año pasado cuando llegó aquí y sigue asistiendo a las víctimas y al crisis de Puerto Rico. Y ahora lo tenemos aquí llamando la atención a las condiciones que son inaceptables en la Autoridad de Vivienda Pública. Nosotros visitamos un apartamento esta mañana, el apartamento de Jeff Blighter. Ahí vimos unas condiciones que ninguno de nosotros, ni por un día podemos aceptar en nuestros hogares. Entonces la cuestión viene y la cuestión que tenemos es por qué, por meses y años, los residentes de housing tienen que vivir en esas condiciones. Unas condiciones que si fuese por los padres, las agencias de la ciudad vienen y le quitan los niños. Pero ellos no fueron los que hicieron y crearon esas condiciones. Las condiciones las crearon housing. Y eso, damas y caballeros, tiene que parar. Eso nosotros nunca como neoyorquinos lo podemos aceptar. Eso hoy cambia hoy gracias a la presencia del gobernador Cuomo. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Questions for myself or any of my colleagues? Well, first, let me applaud Pix 11 for your coverage. Journalism at its best exposes a problem, and then the way I see it, government and responsible leadership responds, and you've done a great job exposing the problem. Short answer is yes. For me, this is all about action. This is all about now getting to a solution, making a difference. Borough President mentioned Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, what did we do? We mobilized. That's what we do as New Yorkers. We mobilize, we get things done. This is not rocket science. This is basic construction. The problem is the NYCHA management bureaucracy, much of which is not their own doing. They have federal rules. They have a lot of regulations they have to follow. How do we bypass that management bureaucracy and get contractors in here working quickly? I will do everything I can on the state level. We're starting with a full inspection by the State Health Department to find out and do an assessment of what health risks we have and safety risks we have. I've said to the City Council I'm going to meet with them tomorrow. I want to know their solution tomorrow and what specific emergency declaration they want. I want the New York State Assembly to tell me what is their solution, what do they want. I want to get it done in the budget that's due by April 1, and I want to make progress. It's not about talking, it's not about blaming, it's not about shifting responsibility. Let's just improve the lives of people. That's what government's about, and that's what we're going to do.
What disturbed you the most about what you saw today? Because you've been involved in housing
I'll tell you what disturbed me, and it was disgusting. It was disgusting. And as I said, I've been in public housing. I've been in the worst housing all across this country. I've been in Native American reservations. I've been in all the quote-unquote bad public housing authorities all across the country. It was disgusting. It was upsetting. And what was most upsetting to me was seeing young Jesse in that unit, seeing a 14-month-old child being subjected to those conditions. That's what was most upsetting, that we would have children exposed to those conditions in this state today.
NYCHA has lost a lot of state funding over the years. Now that you're here, and I know you're saying management is part of the issue, but so is funding. Would you commit to adding more state funding?
Yeah, let's start with some facts, okay? Because facts are important. NYCHA is a purely city-run agency. The state does not fund NYCHA. There were 150 housing authorities in the state of New York. They are all run by the local municipality. So New York City, NYCHA is run by New York City. The state has zero role in the running of New York City Housing Authority. New York City Housing Authority has been so bad that the state has appropriated money to help NYCHA. The only housing authority in the state that we have actually given money to is NYCHA. NYCHA hasn't even been able to tell us how they would spend the money. That's the point. There's no point in giving an agency money that's going to take 3 years to spend the money. Jesse is not going to be 4.5 and live in these conditions. It is a management problem. Find a way around the management bureaucracy so the funds can be spent and the improvement can be made. I'm not blaming anybody else, but get the facts straight. This is a purely New York City run agency. The federal government, HUD, is a partner in the management. The state has absolutely nothing to do with it. It has no funding obligation. There are 150 housing authorities. We've never provided funding before except NYCHA, and it's not about money when an agency can't spend the money. If you don't fix the management problem and the capacity problem, you've done nothing. So let's stop talking in circles with all these politicians making different claims. Know the facts, identify the problem, fix it.
When is work in these buildings realistically going to begin?
Yeah, I don't know where the mayor is, and that's none of my business. I got involved in Puerto Rico because it was an emergency in Puerto Rico. I'm getting involved in NYCHA because it's an emergency in NYCHA. You may say it's gone on for years. This has been the most egregious situation I've ever seen, and I commend the residents and President Danny Barber and his attorney, who have organized and mobilized. They've started lawsuits, and frankly, I think they have, to their credit, driven the attention that NYCHA is now getting. And they're exactly right. The lawsuits, their activism has informed New Yorkers, and New Yorkers are responding. And I'm responding on behalf of New Yorkers. The question is this. That's exactly the relevant question. I want the city council tomorrow to tell me what solution they want from the state. We need a new management solution that bypasses the NYCHA bureaucracy. We do that two ways. One is with with what's called design bill legislation. One is the state declares an emergency and appoints a management agent, a contractor, an independent monitor. We could take over control. There's a whole host of options. I am looking to the city council and the mayor to tell me what specific mechanism they want. I'm open to all of the above, but I want the city council and the mayor to make the decision. I want the New York State Legislature, the Assembly, to make the decision, and I will enact it as soon as they make the decision. I want the decision in 2 weeks. Otherwise, I'll make the decision myself by the time we do the budget April 1.
Thank you guys, thank you.
Putting a boiler in is not a 3-year project. Yes, we know how to put boilers in. It should take weeks, not months. Thank you.